Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the second season of Captain of Industry. In case you are not familiar with this game, then allow me to enlighten you. This is one of the best factory building games out there at the moment, and instead of the factory just serving the expansion of itself, it is also necessary to keep a group of colonists and refugees alive and happy, after some kind of unspecified global collapse of society. Yeah, the game story isn't really fleshed out right now. Most of the production chains are also much more detailed than they are in other games, well, at least in their vanilla states. Here, instead of just shoving a bunch of fuel and metal ore into a furnace, you have to also build a channel for molten metals to dedicated caster buildings from the actual furnace, and you also need to get rid of both gaseous and solid waste products in the form of air pollution and solid slag. You'll see when we get there, it's one of the first things we need to do. As for the game setup, I am once again playing on the map called Kurland. It's the biggest one of the bunch. I learned that I much rather have a lot of space to build on, instead of fighting with the terrain to make space for my production setups. This does mean that the biggest problem we will face in this series is the massive distances our trucks will have to cover. This will mean a lot of fuel being used, and trucks being tied up on jobs that take a long time to finish. Otherwise, we are playing on completely regular captain difficulty, which is the medium one. I was tempted to increase the amount of resources on the overworld map sites, but let's try to succeed with everything set to default. So, let's get started. First thing I did was the construction of a waste disposal building on the main town. This is where the general rubbish is collected from the people, which we will need to find a way to get rid of, because it will get full pretty quickly as the population grows. Then I built 2 research facilities next to the shipyard. Normally, I'd start with just one, and build more as we get more resources, but I wanted to speed things up a little. Then came a wood burning furnace. That will take in wood, burn it in a low oxygen environment, turning it into charcoal. Until we get our mining operations going, that's where we get the fuel for our metal processing. And then came the actual blast furnaces for smelting iron. You will also notice that I keep adding these chimneys to the buildings. That's where we get rid of the gaseous waste products. I think one of these smokestacks could theoretically handle the output of 2 furnaces, but they are super cheap, so I don't mind doing it like this. And then came 4 metal casters. They will receive the molten iron from the furnaces, and pour it into, well, casts. We get nice iron plates out of this. There was still the question of the solid waste, namely the slag left over after the melting process, which will come out of the last remaining outlets on the furnaces. To be able to use them, I had to move them back by 1 tile, since the molten channels created a merging node, and we need another one of those for the slag conveyors. 2 of those nodes cannot be right next to each other on the same Z level, in case you're wondering. Then came the wood cutting. Thankfully, we have a machine ready to go for this. We only needed to assign 2 of our trucks to it, designate a couple trees to be cut down, and the process was started. There. Now that truck will take the wood to the charcoal furnace for processing. We also start with an abandoned calm station. It's only there so we can break it down to get some scrap metal and bricks from it. Don't get used to it, it's rather limited, so we will soon need to find an alternative source of iron and bricks. You might have noticed that I just clicked on those research stations to build them quickly. That's the so-called Unity boost. If we have the resources available, we can just enlist the help of our people, and use some community goodwill to speed up some things. Now, on to research. I just set some of the more important technologies to be discovered first, and then I just added the rest as my mouse cursor came across them. These early projects are not really that hard, and it doesn't really matter in what order they are completed, so I just added all the technologies all the way up to the next tier of research, which will take a bit of planning to get into. Anyways, I'm glad to see that the iron smelting is up and running. And you might have noticed those objectives on the left side. They are basically the tutorial. If you're new, you only need to follow the instructions, and if something isn't immediately clear, you can click on those small graduation cap icons, and it will open the game's encyclopedia, which will explain everything. Also, as we complete those objectives, we get some resources as a reward. They are very important to keep things going in these early days. Now, time to start actually manufacturing stuff. At the beginning, we only have 3 things we can make: mechanical parts, electronics, and construction parts. Don't worry, that list will get longer. A lot longer. Now, the town waste collection station is already starting to fill up. Instead of waiting until things get bad, we should start moving the garbage. At the start, The only option we have is to dump it somewhere. Some players like to use it as a filler material for terraforming. I am not one of those players. Personally, I like to just dump it somewhere nearby, and then burn it once the relevant buildings are researched. So, we will have a big pile of rubbish near the town for a little while. I think I might have overextended a little bit. Usually, a single research station and a single set of iron smelting setup is enough in the early game, but I went big. Now we have no more construction parts to build the actual factory that will make it for us. No biggie. We can just scale some other things back. One farm field will be enough for now. I would still like to avoid building over the site, so I still place the second field, only put it on pause. And the first factory is finished. This will turn iron plates, wood, and bricks into construction parts. And the technologies are coming fast with 2 labs working on it. Time to do the power. I like to have it like this, so we can feed both them, and the shipyard with fuel from a single source. These are bog standard diesel generators. They take fuel, and turn it into electricity. Not exactly the most efficient way of powering the island. But they are very handy early on, and they are still useful later down the line, as a kind of backup power source, in case the main power plant goes down for some reason. Next, we need a source of bricks. I much rather use concrete for the construction parts, but we need to do this instead in the early game. Oh well, it will act as a convenient place to sink the soil we mine, so it's not entirely useless. And let's not forget about the maintenance. Everything in the game need to be kept in good shape for them to operate normally, and for that, we need maintenance points. Everything deteriorates at a certain rate as they are used, and these points are what counteracts that deterioration. And then there's this, the trading dock. It's the place where we can trade with other settlements in the early game for basic materials. We will need to use this a lot to keep our supply of bricks going, since that single brickworks will not be enough. Speaking of, bricks require dirt, coal, and water to make. Dirt and coal are pretty easy, but water is a bit more interesting. The first source of it will come from rain collectors, 2 of which will be more than enough to supply this factory. To speed up the construction a little, how about we build some more factories that make the relevant stuff? Giving those factories a construction priority will ensure that they get the materials first. While all that is going on, how about we set up diesel production? Unfortunately, the only source of oil that we can reach right now is pretty far away, so it will be a bit awkward to deal with it, but once it's all set up, we just need to go there to pick up the fuel. This is the most rudimentary fuel refining setup we can do. We get crude oil from the pump jacks, pipe it into a basic distiller, along with some coal for heating, and we get exhaust gases, waste water, and precious diesel fuel out of it. We already know how to get rid of exhaust. Waste water is similar, we just dump it into the sea, instead of the atmosphere. And that's it. The most bog standard and basic fuel setup. Later on, it will get a lot more complicated, and we will need to deal with all sorts of byproducts, like heavy and light oil, sour water, sulfur, ammonia, etc. Things get real interesting real fast in this game. Since the factories need materials to work with, we can set up storages next to them, and once we research them, we can also use conveyor belts to fill those materials in. Since we have a tutorial objective for this, we might as well set up the wood storage next to the construction parts factories. In the meantime, we managed to finish researching the rubber production. We can just use diesel and coal to make it early on. Later, we will also be able to use sulfur for this, which is a bit more efficient. Also, we should be careful to only connect things that go together. Feed diesel into the diesel input, and route the wastewater into the wastewater dump. At least this one doesn't create air pollution. Now, The thing is, all these buildings, they are not automated. We still need people to work in them, so we need to expand the settlement. And as the population grows, they will need more stuff to stay alive, like a more varied diet, healthcare, luxury items, etc. That's not a problem right now, but later on, it will be. Now that we have liquid tanks, we can place down one at the main dock, so we can just fill that up, and it will in turn feed the diesel generators in the shipyard. We can also set certain storages to be filled up, or to be kept empty to a certain degree. For example, the diesel storage at the basic refinery? We should keep that one empty, so as long as there are storages that can accept the stuff, trucks will come and move it away. Anyways, the wood storage at the factories is done, so if the trucks cannot find a place to store the fresh logs, they will just take it there. And now that we can store it, we can also use it for trading. The thing is, the more we use a certain exchange in a settlement, the more expensive it will get. Good thing wood is pretty easy to come by, so this is one of the trades that I don't mind getting a bit steep. And until we can sort out a reliable concrete slab production, we will need to keep trading wood for bricks. Unfortunately, the brickworks are a bit unreliable. Might as well place down the rest of the storages for the construction part factories. One for iron, one for the bricks, and one more for the concrete slabs for later. Thankfully, we don't really have to feed the bricks and the concrete separately into the factories, we can just combine those into a single conveyor belt. We can also set priorities on buildings. Like this maintenance depot. It is extremely important to operate all the time, so it is a prime candidate to be on the highest setting. Anyways, this is the lighthouse, or beacon as it's called in the game. This will attract other refugees to the island, so we can keep bolstering our workforce. As you might have noticed, we are a bit short on capable hands right now. We might as well set up a self-contained maintenance production chain. One of these depots will need to be fed with the output of 2 Tier 1 factories, which will make mechanical and electrical parts for it. The electronics will be slightly overproduced, but the mechanical parts are a 1-to-1 ratio. And to feed those factories, we need 3 warehouses. Iron for the mechanical parts, copper and rubber for the electronics. And since these will only ever make stuff for the maintenance depots, we might as well set these to be priority 1 too, same as the depots. This will ensure that they get the relevant materials first, and they will also get priority to get power, in case we have any trouble with that later on. I didn't set that right now, but we'll do it once they are finished. And we need to keep buying more bricks. We are going to go pretty far with those trades. If I took things a bit more slowly, then we could easily do this with just the brickworks, but I want to get to the good stuff as soon as possible. And here comes the vehicle assembly. This one takes vehicle parts, rubber, and fuel, and makes, well, vehicles. And not just trucks. It will also make excavators, wood cutters, and something that was added with the last big update, wood planters. I got to love the way forestry looks now. Before this update, trees would be just cut down, leaving an empty field behind. Now we have nice tree stumps all over the place. Diesel is just as important as maintenance, so I also set the distiller to be priority 1, so it gets any coal deliveries before anything else. Well, we have enough construction materials, but kind of lack the trucks to move them around. Starting to encounter one of the biggest bottlenecks of this map, the amount of vehicles needed for deliveries. Good thing we have the Unity mechanics in the game, so we can help them out by moving some stuff manually. Anyways, now that we have excavators being built, we can start thinking about mining, one of the best parts of the game. You'll see why people love the mining in this game soon. To get started, we just need a mining control tower, an excavator, and some trucks. Then tell the tower where it's allowed to work, and then set a certain amount of land to be mined out in that area. Then assign the vehicles to the tower, and they will get to work. These new vehicle models look real nice. I like the old ones too, but the improvement is obvious. Anyways, this is why people like mining in this game. It's not just the usual thing with having a mine building, and that's that. Here, we need to actually carve into the mountain, and slowly level it down. And once we reach ground level, we need to start digging down. It's very satisfying. But, we are not just digging up the metal ores, we are also picking up some dirt and stone in the process. And those need to go somewhere. This is where dumping comes in. I think I will try to keep using dirt to make bricks for now, but the stone can be dumped into the sea, and as a result, we will create new land for us to build on. As a side note, at the start of the game, I told my trucks to only dump the town garbage. This means, it can be dumped without a mining tower. I would like to have a bit more control over where the other stuff gets dropped off, so for those, I use mining towers. And the best thing is, we don't need to finish building the towers for this functionality. We only need to build them to be able to mine. To build out the coastline, I just placed a mining tower nearby, paused the construction, set the coast as the operational area, told it to only accept rock and slag, and start extending the coastline. Speaking of slag, now that we are out of metal scrap from the abandoned comms tower, we need to start using actual iron ore to melt, and since it's not pure iron, we have slag as a byproduct. Later, we will be able to use it to make concrete, but for now we can just use it as a filler material for the coast building project. And while I was babbling, I also set up a coal mining operation. The thing is, instead of strip mining it to ground level first, I immediately started digging down. Since we need to go through a lot of dirt in this process, it will take some time to reach the actual coal deposits. In fact, we will barely manage to get to it by the end of this episode. Here, I extended the number of factories that make construction parts to 8, but I made sure to pause the new additions. I just want to keep them there as placeholders for later. Well, time to buy more bricks. The thing is, I completely forgot that I set the storage to be filled up, which means trucks will take the bricks to the storage, but will not come to take them out. A 100% fill setting is perfect when we have conveyor belts doing the unloading, but we are not there yet. I'll notice this error a bit later. Okay, the maintenance production buildings are done. Let's set them to priority 1, since they are responsible for keeping our machines in tip-top shape. And in the meantime, we managed to research conveyor belts too. The unfortunate thing about those, is that they require tier 2 construction materials. We are not quite there yet. But that's no reason not to plan them out in advance. So, the factories will feed into the maintenance depots. And of course, the warehouses will feed the raw materials into the factories. I could have fed the copper and iron through much shorter belts, but I like to keep things organized. Plus, having all 3 belts in this stacked configuration looks kind of neat. Also, this makes future expansions a little easier, we just need to add more factories, and hook them into those stacked belts. Food-wise, we are still okay. One farm field can make 9.2 potatoes per minute on average, and the consumption in town is 9.1. And thankfully, the food storage is big enough that we can coast on negative production for a while, before it becomes a massive problem. Plus we have that second farm on standby. And now that we have conveyor belts, let's sort out the iron smelting operation. If we give them a dedicated storage for all materials, and fill all furnaces from those with belts, then we only need to keep one thing full, instead of multiple things. We need 3 of them. One for iron ore, one for coal, and a third one for collecting the slag byproduct. I'll use the same stacked conveyor belt setup here as well. That will make it easier to expand the array later on. Okay, that's the raw inputs taken care of. Now the slag output. Yeah, that will do nicely. If we need to, we can just keep building more furnaces next to the existing ones, and just hook up the relevant conveyors as needed. By the way, I set that 4th warehouse to store the finished construction materials since we need that for one of the tutorial objectives. The final storage will be on the other end of the array, and that one will be reset to store concrete slabs instead. Yeah, I still haven't noticed that the brick storage is set to be filled up, so I'll just keep buying more from that neighboring settlement. No matter, we would need to do it later anyway. Finally, the penny drops. As I've said before, if we set the warehouse to be filled up, it will be kept full, but nothing can be taken out by trucks. This is perfect when we have conveyor belts doing the emptying, but we are not there yet. What we need desperately right now is coal. But otherwise, we are stable, so I could have just bridged the gap by either starting with ground level mining, instead of digging down right away, or by building another charcoal furnace. I opted to just wait it out. Alright, time to start digging into the coal deposit. I opted to go 5 levels down, so this will take the rest of the episode to finish, but once we get there, it will be a big help. Yeah, I am wasting a lot of wood by buying so many bricks so frequently. But have you seen the island lately? It's covered in trees, so we're going to be fine. Nice, more tutorial objectives got ticked off the list, giving us more materials to work with. The problem is, until we get a fuel station built, which requires Tier 2 construction materials, the excavators will periodically need to go to the nearest fuel source to refill, and that is at the shipyard. Also, I just added a new factory, which will make some vehicle parts for us, which we need to make more trucks and excavators. And just under the Tier 1 construction factories, I started the next tier, which will require the previous level materials, as well as electronics to be built. In hindsight, I might have been better off only digging a single tile-wide ramp down to the mining pit. Oh well, we will get there soon. I was really close to just building another charcoal furnace, but we will need to stop them once coal mining is up anyway, so let's just wait it out. And the excavator is off to refuel. It doesn't really help matters that the shipyard is so far away, so it actually uses a lot of that fuel to go back and forth. Can't wait to get those fuel stations. Those can be hooked up to a fuel storage tank with pipes, and have a couple trucks assigned to them. Those trucks will then take the diesel, and take it to the machines that need it. That will improve productivity immensely. Have I said that I love the way tree harvesting looks now? Before this update, the harvester would just cut the tree down, strip down the branches, and just drop the whole tree log into the truck. Now it actually takes the time to cut it into smaller pieces. Now it makes sense to get the higher tier harvesters. Yeah, since our coal supply is a bit lacking these days, we need to keep buying more bricks. But our brave little excavator is hard at work, and will reach the coal soon. In fact, we can give it a helping hand by assigning more trucks to the mining tower. A lot of time is being wasted by the already assigned ones moving back and forth between the site and the different places where they can drop off the dirt. Adding more of them will speed things up quite a bit. Unfortunately, the only place they can drop dirt off is in the brickworks, and that is now full. No biggie, we can just tell the coastal dumping to also accept dirt. There. We have a bit of coal poking through the ground. We will reach the deposit pretty soon. And it's off to refuel again. The unfortunate side effect of adding more trucks to the mining tower is that they are not doing deliveries in other places. But we only really need to reach the coal, after that they can go back to doing other things. Yeah, I definitely should have just used a single tile ramp at the start. There, did you see it? We just had a scoop of coal going into one of the trucks. We are now have a proper coal mining industry. And we're off to refuel again. I think it's pretty obvious why those fuel stations will be a game changer. Now that we reached the coal, we can take off the extra trucks from the mining tower. We are starting to build a pretty big logistics backlog. There's still quite a bit of dirt going into the trucks, but we will soon reach the heart of the deposit. And I think that's where we will leave it for today. I think I could have been a bit more careful with the speed of our expansions, but I'm relatively happy with the state of things all things considered. We are rushing through the early research quite fast, so we should have our hands full with a lot of industrial planning in the next episode. I'm hoping to set up concrete production at the very least, but we also need to take care of copper, which is slightly different from iron, since we need to run the initial copper plates through extra refinement to get pure copper. But the main attraction is definitely the concrete. That will require 4 separate materials to be produced. Water, which is easy enough. Then we need sand, which we can just dig up from the shoreline. There's also some kind of filler material, for which I decided to use crushed slag. Now that we are no longer using iron scrap to make plates, we have a lot of extra slag made, so we can just crush it, and use it as concrete filler. And lastly, we will need the actual cement, which is made in rotary kilns, with limestone as the raw material. Can't wait. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, then leaving a like and subscribing to the channel just might motivate me to make more. If you are more in the donating mood, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description, where you can buy me a glass of water. I don't really drink coffee. Thank you for your support, and until next time, I will see you later.